You know, if you were to ask young Marvin, host of Part-Time Theories, who is your favorite Avenger, he would have said Thor, the god of thunder, the main character of Infinity War, the guy who shoots lightning bolts and shit. If you asked him how many movies of Thor he actually saw, he would have said 0. I only really saw the Avengers movies as a kid. Okay, well, the Avengers as a kid. Hey, don't blame me, blame Disney XD, they reran that shit every Saturday. I've only really seen half of this movie once I caught it on TV. Yes, The Machines of the Ancients. And from what I remember, it was alright. I think I should make sure of that. The movie starts with Natalie Portman, also known as Jane Foster, studying the stars with her colleagues, and then makes her friend drive straight into a lightning tornado. What a jackass. She also runs over a pedestrian or something, whatever. After this display of psychopathy, we get a history lesson brought to you by Odin. So it turns out the ice giants tried to take over other realms, including Earth, so Odin showed up and kindly told them to fuck off. As he's calmly telling them to fuck off, he takes the source of their power, this weird casket thing. Odin is telling this story to his kids to teach them about the important aspects of being king. They pay attention to none of them because they're looking at the cool shiny artifacts in the room. We cut to, judging by Thor's canon age, over 1,000 years later, to Thor's coronation day. He's about to be named King of Asgard, but unfortunately it's interrupted by the icy giants, who are very sore losers and want their casket back. Fortunately, they instantly die. Odin is just kinda meh, who the fuck cares? But Thor's like, bruh, these slushy-looking motherfuckers just broke into Asgard and into our vaults. He demands his father to do something since they have just broken a truce, and if they have stolen even one of the items, it would have been catastrophic. Odin practically says, shut the fuck up, you're not king yet. Despite Thor's call to action being rash, he's not wrong here. Like, you can't just let the frost giants do whatever the fuck they want. Odin is either way too chill for his own good, or way too stupid. Thor gets a little angry, so Loki decides to show him his support and saying that there's nothing he can really do without defying their father. From this, Thor gets an idea. He's one of those idea guys, you see. He convinces his friends to go to Jotunheim to demand answers. Man, this movie looks cool. Anyway, Heimdall the Gatekeeper is also curious as to how the fuck the popsicle giants infiltrated Asgard, and since Thor's the only guy proposing anything to figure this out, he helps him out. They arrive at the Slushy Titans planet and ask them about how the fuck they infiltrated Asgard, and they say that the House of Odin is full of traitors. Interesting. The refrigerator giants tell them to leave, and they do. Unfortunately, Thor gets called a princess, which he takes as harassment, so he starts beating the shit out of every popsicle golem he sees. A battle begins, and Loki gets grabbed by one of the frost giants, and his skin turns blue. Dabba-dee dabba-da. The crew is unfortunately surrounded until Odin shows up. Yay. He tells the 0 degree. I just realized they're mowing the lawn outside. Fucking hell. Any other day. Anyway, when the crew is surrounded, Odin shows up and tells the 0 degree giants to ignore Thor's actions because he just finished reorganizing his schedule, and starting a war would mean reworking it completely. Unfortunately for Odin, the cool giants aren't cool like that, so his schedule is now fucked. Odin realizes that Thor isn't ready to be king. You would think the all-wise Allfather would get that from the temper tantrums and the quick-to-violence attitude, but I guess it takes a little more. With the power of very janky special effects, he vanishes Thor and Mjolnir out of Asgard, and we're back at the beginning of the movie. Anyway, Thor is very confused and starts shouting out to the sky, which prompts the psychopaths to tase him. Oh, there's Mjolnir. I think the Bifrost might have some lag. Thor is in the hospital, which goes about as well as you might think. Meanwhile, Jane, Eric, and Darcy, yes, her name is Darcy. Look at the pictures of some anomalies they've been studying in the sky. They find a figure of a man who is very obviously Thor, so obviously, they run him over a second time. Meanwhile, Mjolnir has kind of become a sort of Sword in the Stone tourist attraction, until Coulson shows up in what I'm pretty sure is just reused footage from Iron Man 2. Fun fact, Donald Blake is Thor's human identity in the comics. It was more of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde situation, so Donald kinda went insane inside of Thor's mind. Man, this guy just surrounds himself with psychopaths. If I told you this image was from Star Wars, you would believe me. In Asgard, Loki reveals he told Heimdall to go look for Odin just to make sure they would survive. As he leaves the room, Thor's friends remark that the Lich King said that they were traitors in the House of Odin. Loki heads into the treasure room and grabs the casket and finds out he's an ice golem. Odin reveals he took him in because he was innocent and could maybe help unite Asgard and Jotunheim, but unfortunately that can't happen now because, Thor. Loki is very pissed at Odin because his entire life is a lie, which causes Odin to enter cardiac arrest. I think. Meanwhile, Thor is eating like he wants to have a cardiac arrest and hears about Mjolnir's location and how it's surrounded by the feds. Thor says his goodbye to the scientists and goes to look for Mjolnir. Unfortunately, Coulson takes Jane's equipment and research because government. On brand with government, Loki's king of Asgard now and refuses to bring back Thor because it would be disrespectful to Odin or something. Thor is as lost as a son of a bitch on a Father's Day, so Jane decides to give him a lift. And they make a deal. She'll take him to Mjolnir, and he'll get her research back. In the facility, Thor breaks in because Mjolnir is interfering with electromagnetic waves, which makes the security system kind of wonky. Here we meet Clint Barton. Yes, Hawkeye. That's all we see of him in the movie. Thor makes it to the hammer, tries to lift it, but can't, which makes him a little upset. Heimdall sees Thor get arrested from galaxies away, because this is a power he has. Coulson interviews Thor to see if he can get anything out of him, but he's too fucking depressed to answer. Coulson leaves for a second, which prompts Loki to show up. He tells Thor that their father is dead, his mother doesn't want to see him, and that the truce with Jotunheim forbids him from coming back to Asgard.
What?
I think this is the best scene in the movie. Ever since he was a kid, Thor believed that he could get anything by asking or fighting for it. And since he was so strong, there was never something that could stop him from doing this. Well, there was, but we'll get to that later. And by later, I mean when I talk about Ragnarok. Here, for the first time in 1,000 years, Thor learns humility. It only took him to lose everything to learn it. Loki tries to lift Mjolnir, but obviously can't. Eric manages to convince Coulson to let Thor go, and they have a drinking competition. Yes, this is what happens in the movie. Meanwhile, Loki reveals to the Absolute Zero Giants that he's the one who led them into Asgard and offers them an alliance to kill Odin. In contrast, Thor is having a romantic moment with Jane while explaining the World Tree. He also managed to get back part of her research, which he apologized that he couldn't get back everything. Anyway, Heimdall indirectly helps Thor's friends get to Earth and... After a dark fantasy sequence, Loki sends the destroyer to Earth. Thor reunites with his friends McBreakfast, and they tell him his father is alive, and that Loki lied to him. I think they tell him that Loki lied to him. I don't know, it wasn't in the movie, he just knows Loki lied at the end. Heimdall gets frozen. Stupid ice beam. The destroyer shows up, kicks Shield's ass, kicks Thor's friend's ass, and Thor decides to sacrifice himself. So it kicks his ass too. Fortunately, this makes him worthy of Mjolnir again. I guess it just takes a really good beatdown to be worthy of this thing, doesn't it? Thor one-shots the thing and manages to get Jane's research back with the power of persuasion. At the same time, Loki welcomes the Frost Giants to Asgard. Heimdall breaks free and brings Thor back to his home. Loki betrays the Popsicle Titans, because this will be good for his reputation, but unfortunately Thor shows up here to ruin his reputation completely, exposing him as a traitor and his lies. Loki shoots him because he didn't have knives at the time, I guess, and makes his way to the Bifrost Bi-Horse. I'm sorry, Thor is faster than that. He would catch up to him instantly. Anyway, Loki uses the Bifrost to destroy Jotunheim, because that was his plan from the beginning. And, oh, I thought God of War came up with that one. Thor shows up, they fight for a bit, until Thor's tired, and says, "Fuck it! I'll have to destroy the Bifrost to save Jotunheim." The Bifrost gets wrecked, which means Thor can't go back to Earth to see Jane, and that the lag problem was never fixed. There's a huge explosion. Thor and Loki are about to fall into the ether, but Odin shows up to save them. He proceeds to be a terrible father, and Loki decides, "I'd rather die," and falls into the ether. At the end of the movie, as Asgard celebrates the defeat of the Slushies, the Odinsons mourn the loss of their son Loki, and Thor yearns to see the love of his life, Jane. There's a conversation here where Thor talks to Odin about there will never be a wiser or greater king than him, and that he'll be forced to live in his shadow forever, and that he's a great father. Sure. Odin says he's proud of him and goes to mourn somewhere else. Thor meets with Heimdall and finds out that Jane still searches for him, now with the help of S.H.I.E.L.D. And then we are treated to the best credits in the MCU, Jesus Christ. There were moments in this movie where the effects were really janky, But this credit sequence is beautiful, probably my favorite part of the movie. Thor is a movie I consider to be pretty standard. It's a movie that does a lot of things good, while having very few flaws. The characters and plot work really well. There's nothing inherently bad, but there's nothing outstanding about this movie, which is not the same thing I could say for movies like Iron Man. Apparently a lot of people who were working on the movie were unsure if they could make Thor work in the MCU, because at this point it was very spy and military focused, but I think they did a good job at integrating it. Will it be the same with Doctor Strange? Who knows, we'll have to wait and see. Thor is a lot better than I remembered, and while the CGI is wacky in a few places, it gets a 7 out of 10. We see Eric and Nick Fury in what seemed to be a shield bunker. Fury grabs a suitcase and reveals the Tesseract, which Eric looks at in awe, and so does Loki, proving that he's still alive and is now influencing Eric. How did he survive? What is the Tesseract? I guess we'll have to wait for Avengers to find it out.